2021, we have another guest, a guest that currently is in China, but who lives for so many years in New York, the wonderful new music clarinetist Vasko Dukovski, who originally is from Macedonia, but since high school, he got his education in the States, in the Interlochen, and then later undergrad and graduate studies at the Juilliard School of Music. And he was for so many years clarinetist of very, very famous contemporary ensembles here in New York, like, just to name a few, for example, like Talea Ensemble, or so he played with ICE International Contemporary Ensembles. He also played with Misen Ensemble for many years, also the Lost Dog, and so on and on. So, and he actually moved 1.5 years ago to China, and he's teaching there, but he's also a composer, but he's teaching the clarinet, and he will tell us about our life there, and also about his recent times in this pandemic in China, and about his situation as a clarinetist, as a performer. So we are very curious what's going on with Vasko Dukovski. So he's with us. Hello, Vasko. Nice to see you.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Good to have me on your show.
Yes, this is Quarantine Talks about the new dozen innovation. So we are the first, actually, the clarinetist of our presentation. So Vasko, tell me, so how have you been? How are you?
I've been great. Can't complain.
Can you tell us, where are you now? Where are you teaching? Which school, and what are you teaching in China?
So I'm based in Shanghai.
Shanghai?
Yes. And I spent some time in Nanjing, where I actually teach. I teach at the Nanjing University of Arts, which is one of the major art institutions in the country, and definitely it's the biggest arts institution in the Jiangsu province, which is about 80 million people.
You know, but you are teaching all the clarinets, because you are specialist also for the bass clarinet. You have so many clarinets, as I remember.
Yeah.
So you are teaching all the clarinets, right?
Yeah, of course.
And do they also have like wind ensembles? How is the tradition in China at your school, or maybe the clarinet ensemble?
I mean, there are clarinet ensembles around the country, and also there are wind ensembles around the country as well. But the whole tradition, I should say, is maybe not as strong as in many other places in the world, that a whole band tradition is. And as you know, the whole new movement of the classical scene in China is really in the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, it started about 20 years ago, and really for the last 10 years, you have this boom of orchestras and chamber music and all kinds of things that are happening, including wind ensembles. There are so many saxophone players.
Really? More than clarinetists?
Yes, which is really funny, because in many places, you know, or many countries that have sort of more wind band tradition, there are basically an abundance of clarinet players, but not so much saxophones, maybe, right? But here you have, you know, that the clarinet community is actually not as big. Or like flutes, for example, there is a huge flute community.
Interesting.
Well, it's interesting, but you know, I think there is something also to do with the sound and what people are attracted in many places, because you know, if you just for a moment think about the sound of saxophone, there is actually an old bamboo saxophone here in China, which has very similar sound that a lot of people play as a hobby, or there is a whole tradition around that. You know, that the clarinet is a very kind of new thing.
In fact, Vasko, did you have experience, because you love to also find new ways of the sounds and new of the instruments, especially of clarinet? Did you have experience to experience some kind of clarinet in the Chinese tradition, like a traditional instruments, wind instruments? No?
There isn't anything. I mean,
nothing similar.
I've been a fan of, as you know, I play pipes from around the world, and you know, China is not a sort of new experience for me. Yes. I've toured China extensively, actually, about 10 years ago with orchestras. And so I picked up a bunch of flutes, sunas, and hulusi, and and other instruments, and there is really nothing that familiar.
Nothing that familiar.
Or no, I mean, you know, you have the suna, which is basically the sort
Yes.
of ancestor of the oboe.
Before maybe the pandemic, did you also play? Did you make your maybe own contemporary ensemble? How was the new music? And tell a few words about that.
I mean, it's very interesting because it from my experience right now, it's very hard to say anything because so I came here about November last year, and so for the first couple of months I was settling in.
November last year, November 2018, 19.
So basically, as I was settling in, the whole pandemic started. So
that's right, exactly.
So it's really interesting here because there is concert life happening, but of course with limited capacity, and due to the pandemic situation, things of course are restricted, you know. So, but again, this year there is not much going on anyways because of certain restrictions. During the summertime, there are festivals in Shanghai.
But not online. It was
in person.
Oh, that's good.
But this past year, you know, of course, things were very limited because in summertime was still people were still very cautious.
Experience as a teacher, are you teaching online or how is it now?
No, well, starting in the beginning of 2020, of course, the first semester was online. So there was no in-person teaching until the beginning of the fall of 2020. That on from September on was all in person.
So you are actually teaching in person.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But you know, the clarinet is interesting because you can wear a mask. You know, like the other. So
well, I mean, you know, people have experimented around the world in terms of, you know, teaching the instrument and still be cautious about it because
isolated.
You know, people have, some of my colleagues I've seen around the world are teaching in larger rooms with glass, you know, separations, which is something that also orchestras, as you know, experimented with, wearing masks, you know, in different way, or having specially designed masks with a little opening. Of course, none of it it's very comfortable and practical, but there is a system in place that actually checks stuff, you know. I can't go into the school until they, you know, check my temperature, make sure everything's okay and stuff like that. And this is something for all the students. Some students choose to wear a mask. Of course, for our instruments it's very impractical to do that, but you know.
But that's very different than in the States, for example, you know. That's different because we have mostly hybrid or online. So that's difference. That's a difference.
One thing that's a major difference here is that the situation was really handled well, and even though for quite a few months things were shut down and things were very well restricted, things got under control, so we could actually, you know, do in-person stuff. And even now, you know, there are cases here and there, mainly coming from abroad.
Going well, but also, Vasko, do you find time for composing?
As I teach more, you know, I've been focusing more on teaching and you know, doing certain research in terms of that, you know, in teaching stuff and whatnot. But I still compose, which is amazing. I recently had a piece that was premiered on the Sounds of Art Festival in New York. Actually, it was an online event, of course. I wrote
But did you go there? Did you travel to your country?
No.
You didn't.
No. I have not been out of the country. I mean, it's possible, but of course, coming back is slightly problematic because there is difficulties in terms of flights, and also there is a 2-week minimum quarantine and tests and all kinds of things. You know, there is no need to do that.
So you haven't been to Macedonia for like 1.5 years, right? Have you been?
Yeah, I have not. No.
You haven't.
I have not left.
Because as a clarinetist, you have now 3 perspectives. because from one side, you of course you are from Macedonia, from Europe, and you had the education there, and you had got education also in the States, lived here for so many years, and now you are in China, right, teaching. So did it change your way of thinking, and also how do you teach? Also, if you are teaching your students, do you give them some new repertoire? You are writing maybe pieces for your students? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, no, I don't think I've changed anything actually.
It didn't change anything.
I mean,
okay.
I don't think I've changed anything. I mean,
but do you think education
thing,
in Europe and education in the States is the same? Nothing nowadays. Everything is.
Well, I mean, see, I think it's really funny because, and so, I would say that the only different thing I do is that it's how I teach my students with the skills that they need to actually survive in this 21st century.
21st century. Mm-hmm.
Do
they like new music? Your students?
I think young students like new music.
Mm-hmm. But you have maybe Vasko, do you have your favorite, maybe the piece that you perform from the new music, let's call it 21st century, maybe for solo instrument?
There are certain major pieces that are sort of like staple of the clarinet solo repertoire at this point. But I also show them the stuff I've also played at Miller Theater, or things I've premiered from composers that are very young and they wouldn't hear, or those names wouldn't become anything for the next 20 years, let's say, you know. And I also share with them.
When did you play your first piece in new music? Which was
new music I played back in Macedonia.
And how old were you? And do you remember the piece?
I think the first new solo piece I played, usually for us clarinet, is a solo piece.
Solo piece?
It's a piece by a Serbian composer, actually, Ante Grgin, which I recorded a couple of days ago. It's kind of jazzy, folky and stuff. But that was really long time ago. And, you know, when I grew up, there was not much access to sheet music at the time. There was not much access to anything, actually. So it was really hard to find anything new or anything. I remember first time I got my hands on some pieces at a competition I went in Romania. And actually it was from my teacher I studied with
in Macedonia.
Well, I studied in Skopje, but there was a teacher in Sofia that I took lessons with.
So Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Oh, Bulgaria.
So there was
Was it far for you to travel, Vasko? How much did you use train, or how did you travel?
Oh, well, that's a funny story.
Because it's not so close.
Yes. So the interesting thing about that is, I think right now it's probably totally impossible and totally illegal because I was completely underage. Well, I was completely underage, and I would get on a bus, overnight bus,
so
by myself at 16.
Minus 16.
I would get on the I think it was a 10 p.m. bus from Skopje that arrived in Sofia. Sofia is an hour ahead. It arrived there at like 5:30 in the morning.
10 in the morning.
Yeah, it's not actually that far like that. And so then I would get there. Then I found a local bar for really nice morning soup, which is something that people in the Balkans do. Well, actually, many places at least. But I would have that, and then they would open the school. I would go practice a little bit, or if I could find a room, and then wait for my lesson, have a lesson, go back to the bus station, get on the first bus, and come back to Skopje.
Exhausting.
Yeah, so I did that every other week for like about maybe a year and a half. Which again, at this point, I think is completely impossible. I mean, totally illegal. You can't really travel if you're not 18, right? But so then I started studying with him, and he introduced me to some other works. I think by Bulgarian composers, also Romanian. There's a really fascinating piece by Martinu
Martinu?
Or Marti? No, it's
Marti.
not Marti.
Martio.
Marti, I don't know if you know the person. It's really one page. I should also record that piece. It's really cute little one-page piece that has to do with spring, and it's specifically written for the month of March when the snow and ice start melting and you have these drops slowly falling, and it's really kind of mysterious, you know. So I remember I performed that actually for a concert that was in the high school in Skopje, which was also live broadcasted on the national TV. And so I got this strange idea even back then. Given the nature of the piece, I entered the concert hall from the back door. I walked on stage. I also improvised a little bit. I played the piece and then I walked off, and I never came back on stage. So that was, I would say, one of my sort of first theatrical maybe experience,
yes.
performances, and I thought it was pretty kind of cool, you know. I was like, wow, you know, we have the ability to actually this performance thing is actually fascinating. So yeah, then when I came to, I mean, of course, at the time in Macedonia, there was not much of a new music scene happening at all. I mean, which now has changed.
Now more, yes, more music. Can you maybe tell us, Vasko, some few names of the festivals in Macedonia or maybe Bulgaria of the new music? A few names.
Well, there is one festival that's happening in Macedonia.
What's the name?
Which is basically Days of Macedonian Music. But of course, they're inviting foreign ensembles and foreign composers. But it's mainly was started by the Composers Association of Macedonia to promote, of course, Macedonian composers. But the fascinating thing is in the last, a lot of people that, like myself, went abroad and studied. And so we have composers functioning, teaching, performing, writing around the world right now, coming from Macedonia.
Outside the country.
Yeah, which was not, of course, a thing before that. I mean, we have.
Vasko, I also want to ask you. We are talking about the culture. Is piano and Chopin popular in Macedonia? Are there many pianists playing Chopin? Because that's Polish, very Polish, but I want to know how is there.
So the amazing thing is actually Macedonia has a very strong piano school. I don't know what the current situation is exactly, but you know, things have definitely changed in the last 10 years. But of course, you know, Chopin being Polish and writing very expressive, emotional music has always been a composer I think that pianists really love there. And we have quite a number of pianists that come from there, strictly educated there, not the ones that went abroad and studied, but we've had quite a piano actually school for a number of years. I mean, that is to say for many other instruments, you know, when I was, which is something that I see here now in China, you know, you find very young people playing very sophisticated repertoire, you know, which was the thing when I remember when I was in high school. I mean, my classmates played, you know, Tchaikovsky piano concerto or Ravel or Liszt or, you know, Prokofiev and stuff like that at 15, 16, you know, and I'm saying play that really well, you know, not just play it. And you know, the clarinet school has been, I mean, clarinet is sort of very embedded in the culture of Macedonia in terms of, you know, I always cock up the joke, there is no wedding that happens in Macedonia without a clarinet.
So it's kind of a very traditional and very with long tradition instrument, you know, very important instrument for the culture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, basically what happened is in sort of the second half of the 20th century, a lot of the folk players, virtuosos that play folk music on traditional panpipes and kawal, as we call it, but it's just basically a pan flute. And so many styles were created, just in within the borders of Macedonia. You have multiple styles. You have style in the north, style in the west, style in the south, style in the east in terms of like folk music. Each town had their own gang of, musicians that created their own style. And of course, there was a notable clarinetist that played in a particular way. So, you kind of grow up with that.
I'm just thinking, because we are talking so much about this new music, about those sorts of traditions, about your performances, maybe we can also play some maybe of your work. Do you have some recordings of your maybe theatrical videos that you are performing?
Yeah, I mean, I can share. I would love to share with you the piece that was just recently premiered, which is
your work.
Bass, yes, it's a bass clarinet. Okay. It's a bass clarinet quartet.
A quartet. Oh.
And it's sort of also a video piece, which is it's a whole thing.
Video performance.
The title is Clanking Replicator, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it has to do with sort of artificial intelligence of sort of the current world or current state of stuff where
it's very good for our times where we are also for pandemic. Where
exactly.
So we fit very well for our talk, for our quarantine talk. It's a quarantine piece, kind of. Tell a little bit more about this piece.
Totally. Well, I mean, it's literally a quarantine piece because this is the funny thing. In an ideal situation, of course, we have musicians get together. So I was asked to actually do a piece at home, for this particular event that due to the pandemic had to be rescheduled or reorganized and done online instead of offline. And so, I was like, well, what am I in the mood? What am I feeling? And so lately there is a lot of, in the entire world of performance, people are just stacking up little screens of stuff and things are happening and we're multiplying and sharing stuff. The idea was this fascination of where we are with this whole technology and what we are actually doing or capable of doing, and what one can do just being at home with our craft. So I always ask the question. I mean, when I do anything, is it actually relevant? Is it worth spending my time? And so, yeah, it'll be great. I'll share it with you guys.
Great. We'll play it at the end of this conversation, and then we know actually what this quarantine piece that you composed and that we'll just perform. Yes, that's great.
But it is a true quarantine piece.
That's great. And when did you compose it? When did you compose it and how?
I did it in, I think, 3 days.
So we're really quick.
Recorded, produced the whole thing, and it's homemade.
It's homemade recording. Okay, that's also very good. The competition that I'm actually going here this year, a new vision composition competition that of the part of the festival, that Chopin and Friends Festival, when I'm artistic director. But this year we also have the performances from home because of the current situation with the closed concert. Only churches actually are open, and then so the performance for the solo instruments will perform also from home. And we hope for next year that it will be live. Yes, but that's how it's happening. Many things are happening from home.
Of course, it's really fascinating to see that this current situation has, in a sense, woken up more people that are in our profession to utilize the internet, to utilize this technology and still find ways to be relevant and serve their communities and still create works, collaborate with people across the globe. And we did an opera with people on 3 different continents live, a few milliseconds of delay. I mean, this was unthinkable, you know. But it's not that it was unthinkable 2 years ago. Everything was there, except we were not sort of in a situation to
pandemic.
say, oh, we should do this. Because of course we're always thinking, oh, why do that when we can? And I find that, of course, a lot of people are complaining, you know, oh, nothing can replace live music for sure. Nothing can replace us interacting live. But it seems that we are, for the most part, living a very new, different life right now in the 21st century. Come for stuff like this, and yeah, of course, it won't be the same way as, you know, attending a live performance and seeing a person play live. Without my presence on stage, I can still capture the stuff. So when you watch it at home, you can actually experience the same thing. You know, and there are more and more things happening this way, I think.
Well, you know, for sure, you open eyes for many people, because actually there are the possibilities that existed before, but actually people just didn't want to make a try because they didn't get used to that. But now there was a time that actually they were actually somehow forced, because there was like kind of like a necessity for doing that. And it maybe open eyes, and maybe also many things will change in the listeners and audience perceiveness of.
Well, I mean,
they can have different perspective, you know.
Of course, I mean it's so. I think it's normal, you know. There is nothing unusual for people to watch anything on their phone or their iPads or their computer. You know. They're consuming information this way, anyways.
They can.
You know, is it old or new? Doesn't matter to them. I mean, you know, we are in a sense, if you will, content creators. I know this can be misunderstood, you know, because that term can be used for many things, but we do create things that we want people to see or experience or hear, right? And so the delivery mechanism has changed, but this has been a problem, I think, for the last, you know, decade. This idea, I mean, I was doing Skype improvisations from people in Europe 10 years ago. Right?
Yes, we'll see. I don't come, it will change, and you know, we'll see how it will go. Hopefully, you know, that's where we are going. Nice conversation. Your thoughts about all these performances, also live performances, and the virtual world that actually you experienced for so many years. You know, now we will listen your performance of your recent composition with the quarantine idea, you know. And so I wish you a happy also New Year from the New Dance and Art Innovations, you know, having great students.
Thank you.
A lot of innovations also in your teaching, innovations in your creations, in your pieces, and a lot of fun and creative projects, you know. And hopefully also that you can go to your country, you know. I hope that it will be much easier soon going to Macedonia, you know, and country. And also I wish you, of course, that you will come to the States, you know, if it will be, everything will change soon. Also, we'll be back here.
Well, I mean,
I wish you also that.
Hopefully, but you know, it's gonna, I think, take a while for things to become kind of normal for many reasons, aside from the current pandemics. I mean, politically, you know, it's very unfortunate what's happening, and you know, of course, people suffer all the time. But anyways, I don't want to get into that. It's not necessary.
But
happy
thank you,
New Year's to you. Take care.
Bye, Vasko. Take care. Bye.